Maryland football needs to consider a QB change.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day and also doing some work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys go over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland football, after getting crushed by Minnesota, needs to start considering making a lot of changes, but they need to start considering making a quarterback change for the Terps. I finally have said it, that a quarterback change probably needs to happen for Maryland football. And there's a lot of different ways to approach this topic. And a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions on this topic. We all know Billy Edwards has been the starter, but that game against Minnesota, he looked horrible. He looked horrible. It was by far his worst game of the season. I thought he looked like a guy that was overmatched. I thought he looked like a guy that I haven't seen Billy Edwards look like. And this is the first time I've said, I think you have to consider making a quarterback change. There's a couple different reasons why you make a quarterback change. Sometimes it's because the guy's just playing that bad and he continues to play bad week after week. And I don't think that is quite this situation. Or another way that sometimes you make a quarterback change is because the guy behind him, a lot of the times it's a younger guy. A lot of the times he's more talented. A lot of times he has a higher ceiling. A lot of times he has the opportunity to be, well, a lot of people think have more potential as the starter. Sometimes you also just got to give your team a little spark. You got to do something. You got to change something when things aren't going the way that you want them to be. I want to make it clear. I don't think that Billy Edwards has had a bad season at all. I don't think he has played bad this season at all. In a lot of games, he surpassed my expectation, and I think he's played better than what a lot of us thought he could have. He's had some really good games. Just last week against USC, threw for 373 and 2 touchdowns. Even against Indiana in the loss, threw for 3 touchdowns, went 26 of 41. But I think when we look back, when we're starting to go back through these games over these last couple of weeks, the numbers look better, but the numbers are a little bit misleading, I have to say. Because I feel like when I look back, I'm like, oh, he didn't play well there. Oh, he didn't play well there. This week against Minnesota, played horrible. Played his worst game as a quarterback at Maryland. USC 2 weeks ago played a good game. Northwestern 3 weeks ago didn't play well, I didn't think. And then Indiana, a lot of that was misleading. I know I said he had 3 touchdowns, but a lot of that was misleading. A lot of different cover-ups where he didn't play his best game against Indiana. Villanova, I don't really put too much account into that. Virginia had a solid game. Michigan State had a decent game, but that's been a while since he's played some really good football in back-to-back weeks. The USC game over the last 4 or 5 weeks has been really the only game where I've felt like he's played to his full potential or he's played as good as we need him to play. All the other games, it's been pretty solid. It's been okay, but the Maryland team overall hasn't been okay. We've been terrible. We just got crushed by Minnesota, a Minnesota team that I honestly didn't think was that good, a Minnesota team that I thought was decent, and there is far more problems than just Billy Edwards with this team. And I said it before. I said Billy Edwards isn't the problem with this team. I can't speak on everything that Maryland has done to change things up, but I feel like you gotta pull the trigger somewhere and make a quarterback change here. And I feel good, a lot better about it because I just watched MJ Morris go into the game and play really high level football and accomplish more than Billy Edwards did the entire game. MJ Morris, when he came in, went 7 of 8 for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you start to wonder, should MJ Morris be starting? And I'm going to say we should give him the opportunity. I think we should give him the opportunity to start because Billy Edwards posted season low in completion, only had 19 completions, only had 201 yards. His completion percentage wasn't good at 54%. Had some nice plays, but overall just wasn't good enough. Had a horrible pick six, and then threw another interception under pressure. It just wasn't a good performance. And then MJ Morris comes in and looks like he should be the guy and like he should get the opportunity to play. And it'd be one thing if Billy Edwards, if that was the first time he hadn't played well and everything was going well this season. But I think we're getting a large enough sample size to kind of know what Billy Edwards is. He's going to be a decent Big Ten quarterback. I would say he's had some really good high-level moments, but he's not a guy that's going to consistently perform week to week as high as we probably are going to need him to with the current Maryland team. And the current Maryland team has a lot of problems that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I think to give this team a bolt, to give this team some energy, to give this team a little something, because now it looks like we're going to have to win out against to get to a bowl game, we will have to beat Iowa and Rutgers. But to give this team a little something, a little boost, I think you got to consider starting MJ Morris. MJ Morris looked, I think, too good not to play. I think he deserves snaps next game, and I thought he looked like a really solid quarterback. And maybe he's learned. Maybe he wasn't ready to start week one because he just transitioned from NC State, and it's a lot to learn the Maryland offense and those different things. But maybe now he's ready to go. And I said it from the start. I thought MJ Morris would be the starter. I said you don't bring in a guy like this for him to sit. I felt like that until week one, until Billy Edwards walked out there for Maryland football. But I think the way things have gone, you just can't do the same things every single week and expect a different result. I think a quarterback switch could make some sense. I do. And I'm expecting Mike Locksley at least. We have a little bit till this Oregon game that's on November 9th, but I'm expecting Coach Locksley at least maybe to play both guys in that game because I think that it's kind of unfair to after – like this is the week where it's like Billy Edwards goes into Oregon and he might still be the starter, but how good can you possibly look against Oregon? He's going to look not good, and then MJ Morris is going to get an opportunity to play. Like, that's kind of messed up. I think Coach Locksley should go into this game and say both guys are going to get time because whoever starts probably not going to look good against Oregon's defense. That's just the way it is. Oregon's the number one team in the country right now. Maryland's struggling to get Big Ten wins. That guy's probably not going to look good against the Oregon defense. But I do think that to give this team some type of bolt, to give this team some type of energy, I think a quarterback switch has to be something we consider. As well as Billy Edwards looked really bad. It's not just to give us a jolt. He looked pretty bad last week, and he looked good against USC, but I think that when we really come down to it the last 4 or 5 weeks, he hasn't been that good. He's been just okay, and then he looked really bad last week. Like, it's been so up and down and rocky. I think it's fair to say give MJ Morris a chance. Of course, we're playing for a bowl game still, and we're going to have to find a way to beat Rutgers and Iowa to make that happen. But at the same time, this year's kind of lost a little bit. We're not going to get to 8 wins again. We're not going to have that type of season. I think MJ Morris proved in that game that he's ready to play. And from the start, people thought that MJ Morris, a lot of people thought he would be the QB1. I don't know if it took time. I don't know what it would be. But I think he should have the opportunity to play and should have the opportunity to start next week. And I keep saying next week, but the game is actually in 2 weeks. So this is the time for Maryland to do it. this is the time for them to get it done because we have a bye this week before heading over to Eugene, Oregon. So I think a quarterback switch goes best when it's out of bye. And we know that Mike Loxley's terrible off a bye. So let's see if he can make a big switch up or change something. I'll be interested to see what happens. I doubt MJ Moore starts, but I do think that there's a possibility that both guys play against Oregon. I just think he deserves the opportunity. We haven't looked good. Things haven't looked good. And I think that both guys probably won't be the starter next year. I think Malik Washington's going to start next year. I just think that we have to start him. Can't risk losing him. But I just think you have to make a change. We just got crushed by Minnesota. You got to switch something up. Billy Edwards threw 2 picks, a pick 6 on a horrible read. He's just not quite getting it done, and I think we have to make a switch for the Terrapins. So I would absolutely consider a quarterback switch for Maryland football. Same old problems for Maryland. I'll talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook apps gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets, and you will win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It's the same old problems for Maryland football. I can tell you them before the game even starts. And it's getting to be a problem where it's like, can we do something about this? Is it just that we don't have the personnel? Is it that we don't have the talent? Or is it a coaching thing? And I can't point out exactly why. I think we've gotten used to a lot of good players in some of these positions, starting with the secondary. We've gotten used to really good secondary play. We don't have a guy this year that's really, to be honest, we don't have like a guy that's a good player back there. We don't have a good player back there in our secondary in terms of he's good in terms of Big Ten standards. Like in terms of the cornerback room, I mean, he's good in terms of Big Ten standards. Like he's definitely in consideration to get maybe an honorable mention All Big Ten or a third team All Big Ten or a second team All Big Ten like Tarheeb still did, like a Deonte Banks, like a Jacorian Bennett, like those guys. We don't have any guy back there that's like a good football player. To be a good football player in terms of Big Ten standards, like he's good in the Big Ten, like he's one of the better guys in the Big Ten. And I think that we've gotten used to having such a good personnel back there. Like I said, Jacorian, Deonte, Tarheeb Still. There's been some really good players back there for Maryland football. And I think this year we have a young group plus an inexperienced group, and it's absolutely showing for the Terps. It's absolutely showing. We got exposed by Minnesota's quarterback, Max Brosmer. We got absolutely exposed, and it's week after week. Our secondary gets absolutely diced up. And I said against USC, I liked how they played because, yeah, we gave up some yardage to Miller Moss, but we didn't give up a bunch of big plays. We go right back to giving up huge plays to a Minnesota offense who had its best day probably against us, in a Minnesota offense that's been like, they haven't been anything crazy this year. I look back at their numbers. I have not seen them put up these kind of numbers except for against us. And so clearly our secondary is so outmatched out there. And I got to say, it's got to be personnel. It's got to be coaching. I know I just told you guys I don't know which one, but I think I'm starting to realize it's everything. Because you can't play this bad if it's one thing. He threw for 324 touchdowns. Darius Taylor had that's the running back. Daniel Jackson had 9 receptions. There we go. 9 receptions for 117 yards. Elijah Spencer had 6 receptions, 99 yards. Darius Taylor, the running back, 5 receptions, 34 yards. They had so many guys create plays for them in the passing game. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's the same old, a horrible secondary for Maryland. And I'm looking at it. They scored 43 points against us. Minnesota hasn't scored 43 against anybody, above 43 against anybody this year except for Rhode Island. The most they have scored, or they scored 48 against us. The most they have scored in a game that wasn't Rhode Island is that they scored 27 against Nevada and they scored 24 against Michigan. That's not a ton of points. And then they come in and we have to go over there and they come play us. And suddenly Max Brosmer looks like the next Patrick Mahomes. It's a problem, and it's the same old thing every single week where the secondary looks horrible. I don't even care who they trot out there next game. They should just try anybody because clearly we don't have anybody that's played at a decent level. We're getting absolutely torched up there. Big plays, and not enough pressure on the quarterback. I know our defensive line, it's hard to play at a high level sometimes, but it's just like there's nothing going on that defense side of things when we go against the pass. They could do whatever they want, and we're not going to win games like that. We're just not. We're not going to win games by not being able to stop the pass. And then we couldn't really stop their leading rusher either. Darius Taylor averaged 5.4 yards per a touchdown. Nothing like insane, but productive day. And when that goes along with an explosive passing attack, you're not going to win the game. And then so you got secondary issues still, and then offensive line issues as well. Nothing has gotten better. The offensive line looked bad again. Looked really bad for the Maryland Terrapins. One thing's for sure, we can't get anything going with the run game. We couldn't really get much going in terms of Roman Hemby, 8 carries, 31 yards. Nolan Ray, 7 carries, 11 yards. The freshman Williams was able to get there, got 3 carries for 30 yards, had that one big carry. But besides that, it's like we're not doing anything in the running game because the offensive line's so bad. I think we have decent runners of the football. I just think our offensive line can't create any holes. So it's like, how are we going to get anything going? What are we going to do? You're not going to do anything. I've lived by this. It's less about the running back. It's all about the offensive line. Any running back can look good behind a decent offensive line, and I really do believe that. I think any one of those guys can look good against a decent offensive line. But you have 2 really explosive guys in Hemby and Nolan Ray. They're not going to look good if the offensive line is that bad. They're just not. And so they can't get anything growing. And then also Billy Edwards got pressured. And that's why I hate saying there should be a quarterback change because Billy Edwards doesn't have any help. We can't run the football. We can't pass protect. We have good receivers on the outside. That's about it. It's like, what are we supposed to do with that? What is he supposed to do with that? Is MJ Morse really going to come in and look much better? I doubt it. It's just like there's too many different things that it's like the same old things every single week. It's like the secondary, it's offensive line, the run game can't keep going. It's just rinse and repeat. And it's like, how can we fix some of these things? Because the same old problems are happening. And it's really just causing us to lose. And not only lose, it's causing us to get dominated. Got dominated against Northwestern. Got dominated by Minnesota. Teams that we shouldn't be getting crushed by. And so it's just disappointing. Did anyone play well against Minnesota? I'll tell you who I think had actually good games after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I have been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on the tickets right at the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Lowest tickets, lowest price guaranteed. who actually played well against Minnesota? Who are my MVPs from that game? I'm going to do this every single week because we got to take some positives from just horrible football. Quite frankly, that is going on. It's tough. This game was tough to pick out an MVP, but I have a couple of guys that I thought did play actually at a really high level that played better than what I'm used to playing. And I'm going to go all offensive guys because I thought the defense was just terrible. MJ Morris is my overall MVP. For him to come into the game and we're down and we're getting smacked around and look really good was something that I took as he's my overall MVP. 7 of 8, 122 yards, 2 touchdowns. And now he puts himself where he's going to get the opportunity to probably get to play. I think that it's tough because realistically, if MJ Morris doesn't get a chance to play the rest of the season, he's going to hit the portal. And even if he does play, he probably still has a good chance of hitting the portal. And I think when you look at a guy like MJ Morris, I think he's a guy that you would look back and say, we didn't give him the opportunity to play at all. So that's why I think another reason why I think he should get a chance to start. But for him to come in and play at a really high level, I think he deserves the overall MVP because he's kept the game looking a lot better than it did. Because if he came in and played mediocre, which could be expected for someone who's cold coming off the bench, who didn't expect to play today, didn't mentally probably expect to play today, for him to keep us the score somewhat respectable, put some points up on the board for us, 7 of 8, 2 touchdowns. I thought that was pretty special from MJ Morris. I think he's put himself to probably get some time over the end of the season, over the last 4 games. I think he has put himself in a spot where he's going to have the opportunity to play have the opportunity to get some time next week and the weeks after that. Another guy that I thought played really well, Ty Felton, 9 receptions, 104 yards. He continues to be a stud. He continues to be elite. He continues to be a really high-level player. And it's really cool seeing what he's done. I think he's a first-team All-Big Ten guy. I don't see how he wouldn't be. He's still by far the leading receiver in the conference, even now that we're like solidified in Big Ten play, and it's not just him going off against Villanova. What he's doing is really special. 9 receptions, 104 yards. And I think he's a top 3 round guy in the NFL draft. I really like his game. I think he's a really good player, and I think that he should have the opportunity to play in the NFL, and I think he's going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player. And I also want to shout out 2 young receivers that next year are going to have to be huge for us, Shalik and Octavian Smith. Octavian, 4 receptions, 51 yards after he had a really good game against USC where we finally saw the Octavian Smith that I've wanted to see. And he had a really solid game, I thought, against Minnesota where he put together a decent game. 4 receptions, 51 yards is something that you really like to see from a guy like that. And Shalik Knott's 2 receptions, 70 yards, connected with MJ Morris for a big touchdown. I think that Shalik Knott's probably hasn't done quite what he's wanted to do this season. And if he stays, he's going to have a really big role in the offense next year. But he definitely had played at a really high level. But those are some of the guys that I thought played well. As well as Williams, the running back, had a big carry. He hasn't been getting a ton of carries, but the freshman running back, got some carries and had a big carry. So I think some of the young guys showed that they should get more time. And I think you should play some of the younger guys in the coming weeks. But overall, I'll be lying to you guys if I said I wasn't ready for basketball season. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm ready for basketball season, see what this basketball team can do, because this football team, what Mike Loxley's got going on this year, isn't it. The USC win was cool and all, but it does feel like a huge letdown spot after beating USC. I'm just disappointed in what kind of happened and how everything went on. So I do think that was a huge letdown spot, and I think Maryland has to get better. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.